Hey y'all, it's Darren Van Dam, and in way less time than you normally spend scrolling for something to watch, I'm going to recommend 10 amazing movies you can currently catch for free right here on YouTube. That's right, YouTube has a bunch of free movies available at any given time. They change out every month. In this video, we're going to talk about 10 excellent movies. 4 of them make great Halloween watches. This episode is sponsored by Scentbird. Right now, let's start with my number 10 pick, which is a fantastic Halloween watch, Blood and Chocolate. Now soon I will release a video packed with hidden gem horror movies you've likely never heard of, but for now, Blood and Chocolate is a PG-13 crowd pleaser that was clearly released because of the massive popularity of the Twilight books. This actually came out a whole year before the first Twilight movie and has kind of a cooler, sharper edge to it. The main character in this movie is a young woman who's actually a werewolf, and she falls in love with a man. It's basic boilerplate stuff, but it's got a cool aesthetic, and if you generally like things like this, you know, shows like The Vampire Diaries, then Blood and Chocolate is going to be right up your alley. For the select few who actually miss Charlie Sheen, or even more of us who miss the crazy Charlie Sheen, my next pick brings him back with The Arrival.
You knew, didn't you?
This writer-director would actually go on to do Pitch Black and the Riddick movies, but Arrival is a really cool alien invasion movie. Charlie Sheen is fantastic in this, and I say that as someone who's never really been a fan of his outside of his big projects like Platoon. There's some really outdated CGI in it, but that's what you get with a low-budget sci-fi movie from 1996. What I love most about this movie, though, is the journey that Charlie Sheen's character has to go on. From his initial discoveries to some big, massive discoveries, this movie has kind of an ever-changing pace that I find pretty delightful for an alien invasion movie. Now, my number 8 pick went wildly underrated back when it was released because it was so politically charged at the time, especially during the election. But I think 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, is one of Michael Bay's best films. Now, I know that's a big statement, and I don't think that this is the most entertaining movie he's ever done. That would be crazy for me to say, but it's one of the most well-crafted. As a director, he's famous for being big and over the top, and while 13 Hours does go to this sort of big over the top place with lots of sparks and explosions in the climax, for the most part, he actually plays this pretty straight, and you get a sense of real time with it as well. The cast is fantastic. It's filled with people you would not expect, like John Krasinski, who really stands out in this movie. And it's a shame a lot of those performances kind of went unnoticed again because of when this was released. So as far as crafting a story and then effectively telling it, again, I think this is Michael Bay's best effort as a director. Whether you love ghost hunting reality shows, or you're like me and you hate them because they're silly and they literally never find anything.
Are you getting this? Make sure the camera is getting this. Definitely some paranormal activity. It's warm and moist.
You're still probably gonna love Grave Encounters. Now, if you're totally indifferent to ghost hunting reality shows, then I don't know, this one may not interest you, but in Grave Encounters, you follow a ghost hunting team with a cheesy, overbearing host. They go to investigate this abandoned hospital, and it's all pretty straightforward. It's what you would expect. They're not really finding anything, and then, oh my goodness, once they start to find things, this movie just takes a turn, and I love it for the wild turns that this movie takes. And that's the real reason I recommend this movie almost every single Halloween here on the channel, is because it sets things up in such a way it feels like something you've seen a dozen times before or more, and it's not that interesting until things pop off, and then when they do, Grave Encounters just turns into an absolute blast of a horror movie. I don't care if it's filled with jump scares, they're fun in this movie, and it's done by people who you can tell are having a lot of fun making a horror movie. My number 6 pick on this list is one of my favorite underrated horror movies to recommend here on the channel. I have a handful that I really genuinely enjoy turning people on to, and In the Mouth of Madness is currently free on YouTube. Now, this is one I love to talk about every Halloween as well, but I don't see it available to stream every year. In fact, this one can be hard to find at times. I'll also mention it's free on Tubi and on Roku. 2 apps you don't have to pay anything to sign up for. Same goes for YouTube, but these movies are not all available on all those streaming platforms in every country in the world. But in the top pinned comment down below, I've listed where you can stream these movies other than YouTube in the US and in other countries. So go check out that top pinned comment and you'll have a lot more luck finding these titles no matter where you are. But In the Mouth of Madness is easily, hands down, John Carpenter's most underrated movie of all time. He has created some horror masterpieces, movies like Halloween and The Thing, and I happen to think In the Mouth of Madness is one. It's just not nearly as popular as his other hits. In the Mouth of Madness focuses on the writings of a horror novelist named Sutter Kane, who is obviously loosely based on Stephen King. They even share the same initials, and his books are similar in a lot of ways, but they seem to be having some sort of strong effects on their readers. Sam Neill plays this insurance investigator who's going out to try to find out what's going on and just goes down this wild rabbit hole. They actually do a fantastic job of setting up how wild things get at the very beginning of the movie, and then you spend the rest of the movie just descending into hell, and it's not all off-putting stuff. There is some body horror in the movie, but for the most part, this actually plays out like a really taut mystery thriller with some incredible visuals in it. Especially for a horror movie from 1994, there are some arresting visuals in this thing. Something else that's highly underrated, especially for a lot of the men watching, is smelling really good. And that's where today's sponsor, Scentbird, comes in. And that's because Scentbird will send brand new cologne and perfume fragrances to your door in little vials like this one. When you sign up for Scentbird, you'll get one of these little magnetic cases that just pop right open, and then every month they will send you a new vial that has about 100 sprays in it. And I can attest, I've used several of these vials. There's a lot in them, especially when you consider the low price. This one is actually titled Kinetic, and that's what's so cool about Scentbird is they have a lot of fragrances that you're not gonna find in the store. Now, they do have big name brands as well, but I like discovering brand new ones, and each one comes with a little card. They show you all the fragrances in it. Kinetic actually has Italian mandarin, sandalwood, and it really is right up my alley. It smells nice and masculine. They also sent me Floorgasm, which smells exactly what you would think. It is loaded with flower scents. Great perfume for women if you like the smell of fresh flowers. And you could try this today. You could go down to your local mall where they have all the colognes and fragrances you could imagine. You could try to find Kinetic. You probably won't. But even if you do, to get a little vial like this is going to cost at least $30, probably more, depending on the brand. Scentbird starts at just $17 a month, and right now my viewers can save 55% off their first month when they go to the link in the description below and use my code CONNECTION55. And with that discount, you're looking at about $7 for what could be your new favorite fragrance. And they don't just have indie brands either. They have big name brands like Versace, Prada, Gucci, and a bottle from one of those brands can go for hundreds of dollars, making Scentbird a really smart choice. Again, just go to scentbird.com or use the link in the description and use my code CONNECTION55 to get 55% off your first month. It's a great deal, but speaking of great stuff, let's talk about the rest of the hidden gem movies currently included for free on YouTube. Christopher Nolan's first feature film, Following, is also free to watch on YouTube right now. This movie was filmed for $6,000, and you can almost tell, if you think about it, the way that it's shot, the way everything's set up, looks incredibly low budget. Yet what's so amazing about Following is that if you're a fan of Christopher Nolan's style, his storytelling abilities were strong from the get-go. Considering the fact that this movie's not really visually pleasing to look at, the story unfolds really well. It's not as sharp as some of his later work, but still, it feels like Christopher Nolan. And the fact that he was able to make a Christopher Nolan level thriller for what is essentially pocket change to him now is pretty impressive. So again, fans of his work in any kind of capacity definitely need to check this flick out. I don't care if you don't like black and white movies. This one is a cool flick. Now, just a few years before becoming Batman, Christian Bale was beating the snot out of people in this dystopian sci-fi flick, Equilibrium. This movie takes place in a very 1984 style future. Everything has been homogenized and stripped down, all books and literature have been eradicated, and Christian Bale's character actually plays an enforcer tasked with making sure these things are done away with. The population is under total control, and this movie has a killer aesthetic, some really wild, over-the-top fight choreography that's not practical and really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but is really fun to watch. There's this sort of elaborate fight style with guns and everything, and it can be silly if you let it, but it can also be just cool as hell. Christian Bale's good in this movie, but the supporting cast is really great too, and aesthetically it's just got this cool look. It definitely ripped the Matrix off a little bit, but hey, it's a cool look to rip off. In fact, I would actually rank Equilibrium above any of the sequels to The Matrix. Another cool flick makes kind of my last Halloween recommendation on this list, but it's also a killer cult classic that is just loved by millions, Donnie Darko.
I met a new friend.
Real or imaginary?
28 days. Imaginary.
Now, for as weird and hard to understand as this movie is, it's surprisingly popular. And I think that's because it's got so much going for it. You've got a young Jake Gyllenhaal here who is absolutely killing it. You've got aesthetically some pretty impressive visuals on this one as well. A killer soundtrack, absolutely killer, and then just the way this movie's shot and told is actually pretty stunning. I mean, it's got plenty of twists and turns and just a creepy mood that's pretty pervasive, yet it's not this off-putting horror movie that's gonna leave you terrified for days. It's just a good, moody, creepy, thinky type of a movie that, again, has just really stood the test of time. If somehow you've never seen it, make it the first movie you watch off of this list. All right, my next pick is an epic movie from 2002 with tons of excellent sword fighting, and it's actually based on a famous book from the same writer as The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, this movie, I don't know why, but it's just highly underrated. It stars Guy Pearce, Jim Caviezel, and is just an incredible telling of a fantastic story. Now, The Count of Monte Cristo is a work of fiction, but it's loosely based on a true story of revenge, and it's an excellent story of revenge as well. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you like the time period, sword fights, revenge dramas, The Count of Monte Cristo is a top-notch flick. Now, my number one pick is what I consider to be the most underrated science fiction movie of the 21st century so far. We're almost a quarter of the way through it, and still to this day, Sunshine is one of my favorites.
We have a payload to deliver to the heart of our nearest star. That star is dying, and if it dies, everything dies.
Now, this is from director Danny Boyle, who's famous for movies like Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, Slumdog Millionaire, and Sunshine is almost a Stanley Kubrick-level sci-fi flick. In fact, if you like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Sunshine has a lot in common with it, but it plays things a little more straightforward and it's much easier to comprehend. This movie revolves around a mission to the sun. This takes place in the future and the sun is dying. It's starting to burn out, and they're trying to deliver a payload to sort of reignite the sun. Now, that setup is interesting enough, but the journey is really what you're going on here, and it is a wild one. This is one of the most visually stunning movies on the list, easily one of the most visually stunning movies you could just pick up and watch right now on almost any streaming service. It looks that good. You've also got a killer, and I mean killer leading role from Cillian Murphy before he was pretty famous. Chris Evans, Michelle Yeoh, Mark Strong. An amazing score, culminating in just a wildly wonderful sci-fi movie. If you generally like my recommendations and you've never seen Sunshine, congratulations. There's a good chance it's going to be one of your new favorites. But that is the list. Thanks again to Scentbird for sponsoring another video. Don't forget to check out their link in the description and use my coupon code. But I will keep making these episodes as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special YouTube episode, and you will see me on the next one.